Now, that brings me to today's second guest, Grant Abraham from the United Party of Canada. Now, Grant, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Good morning to you.
Good morning to
Very
you.
well, thank you. Yeah.
Now, I understand your party is one of only two parties in the entire general election in Canada that is pro-life, the Christian Heritage Party being the other. Now, what does that say about the current state of affairs in Canada?
Well, the starting point for that discussion, Father Robinson, is the fact that in Canada, since the '80s, we had all of our abortion laws struck down, and right now you can technically have an abortion at birth, which is
At birth.
completely radical in terms of kind of the civilized world's position on abortion, and it's a discussion that I've had right across the country the last 2 years, and I can see that people want to have the discussion about that now, and it's a very divisive topic. People kind of swing to polarities as soon as it's opened up, and it's just one of the things on our platform. I mean, right now in this election, we are dealing with really a battle of good and evil, and the riding that I'm running in, the people are coming to the awareness that in some ways they've been co-opted into a system that is supporting the kind of betrayal of this nation, and in that sense also the rights that would contend for the preborn. And so the abortion issue is symptomatic of kind of the anti-human death cult that is reigning right now in Canada. And so yeah, I'm very interested to speak with you, and thank you for having me on this morning.
Not at all, thank you. You've put out a tweet recently that caught my attention. Well, caught my attention because you tagged me in it. Did you know the Conservative Party of Canada has had no policy to stop abortion since 2004 and never will? Now, if the Conservative Party cannot be conservative in their morality, their values, or their policies, what hope do the Canadian people have?
Well, that was a very profound statement, because when the Conservative Party of Canada was birthed in the early 2000s, it came together. It was a synthesis of kind of what we call in Canada fiscal conservatives and a whole load of social conservatives that would have had those values. And many people look back on that kind of galvanizing time and would say that the social conservative values were betrayed, and indeed they have been. I think that the statement of the conservative leader Pierre Poilievre this last week, where he said that we for 21 years we've never had any intention of engaging this abortion issue, is news to many hundreds of thousands of social conservatives in Canada, because and I know this because I've been involved in it within that party before birthing a new party, which is the reason why we birthed a new party, because there's so many deceptions right now coming out from the Conservative Party with regard to energy, with regard to post nationalism, with regard to foreign interference, and this this context of human life is one of those things where there's almost being a revisionist rewrite of what the actual DNA of the party was, and it was clearly to champion pro life, and people waited for a long time for that to happen, and it's never done it. And in fact, recently, even 2 years ago, the people were going to policy conventions for the Conservative Party with the hope of advancing pro life policies within the Conservative Party. And they did a lot of really good work towards that end, actually. But at the end of the conference, Mr. Poilievre said that there'd be no guarantee that any of those policies would migrate onto an election platform. And so now there's a very clear declaration, and I think social conservatives in Canada need to look at that party and realize that they're actually like an abused wife who's in a relationship, who kind of is treated very badly, if not abused, and their vote is still being used. It's like that. It's like a Stockholm syndrome type of relationship, because people on let's say we used to call it the right of center. It's now kind of the left of center, but to the right of the Liberal Party. They're just in that boat on that ship called the Conservative Party, because that's where they've always lived. But the ship has careened off to the left so far, and they haven't really maybe just realized and say, you know what, I have to do something differently, because no longer can I align my values, my sacred values of life and faith, with the political position of the party. And I think that's kind of a metamorphosis that is going on right now in Canada, and people are starting to wake up to this. And so, yeah, I mean, I am contending for life in this country. We don't just have an abortion issue; we have a euthanasia issue. We have the government inserting itself in between the sacred trust between parents and their children. The Conservative Party of Canada passed a bill that would criminalize parents if they stop their children going trans, and sterilizing themselves and ultimately removing their genitalia. And this is an egregious violation of that sacred relationship between parent and child, that trust, and also the first order of government that was ultimately laid down in terms of be fruitful and multiply and bring orders, build families, because families build communities. And suddenly we have the party that for generations in this country was conserving family values is now undermining them and criminalizing parents for doing that. And a lot of people in this country don't know that the Conservative Party actively, unanimously passed that bill by what's called a unanimous consent motion on the 1st of December 2021. And so this kind of space is one that is in some ways explosive, but it's indicative of a bigger death cult that's going on in this country. It's a good and evil battle.
It's absolutely awful. I want to get to some of your party's policies, and I do want to touch on this parental issue and the trans issue as well. But while we're transitioning from abortion and to what you call the anti-human death cult that has gripped Canada, and I think you're quite right there, because we're seeing other countries like mine, the United Kingdom, want to mirror what's going on in Canada. For some reason, we want to be able to euthanasia too. We've been killing our babies. We also want to kill our elderly and our vulnerable. It's despicable. But what is it about the current culture that embraces death and doesn't see a value in life other than a utilitarian value? How have we shifted so far from the Christian image of we're all made in the image of God, in the image and likeness of God? Every single human life is sacred. We all have dignity and worth in the eyes of God, regardless of how able or disabled we are. How have we gone from that to you are not healthy, you should consider killing yourself?
Well, I think there's an ideological deconstruction going on that has been an affront to a lot of these values. In Canada, I wrote a book on this, in part this migration away from our constitutional framework that discusses the supremacy of God and the rule of law, and how we've allowed our value system to become unplugged from that issue. And when I'm speaking in Canada, wherever I am, I will say that our issues are rooted in our disconnection from that framework. I'll say that the God and the supremacy of God and the rule of law is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that Canadians, whether of any faith or no faith, have to remember that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob makes it very clear that the best thing about the freedom that he gives to humanity is that we have the absolute and ultimate right not to choose him. And whatever we may think about faith or God or anything else, that is the bedrock of our freedom in the nation. And yet, the further we move away from that understanding of the supremacy of God and the rule of law, the more tyranny is allowed to reign. So I ask Canadians when they challenge me on this question, I say, as we've moved away from this understanding in the last 20 years, are we more free or less? And the answer is less. 20 years ago, we were more free because we had the ability to undertake a value assessment within the context of a Judeo-Christian framework and say no and yes to things based on that value framework. And I think that this is one of the, I think at a molecular level in society, this is one of the issues that's going on, is we've allowed this secular and sacred conversation to run wild, so that any of these sacred values that we've seen and sought to see entrenched in our government have now been so partitioned off that they've been irrelevant. And I think the second part of that, my analysis of that is that we've assumed that secularism is a neutral force, and it isn't. It's actually a spiritual force that is anti-human. It is anti-identity of God. It attacks the family structure. It attacks the innocence of children, and we're seeing those attacks right across the spectrum. So
Wow.
this is one of these discussions that I think Canadians, it's like they're troubled. They're troubled with the issues and the departure from the norms that they've seen in their or that they've grown up with in their society, but haven't maybe taken the time to sit and think about where are the cellular breakdowns in the society that's allowing these things to occur. And so this is where we're at. And there's a whole host of other things. There's been this whole concept of where has the Christian church been in relation to the public square and actually engaging these issues, because they've allowed themselves to, whether it's by their receipt granting status or whatever, be neutered and made impotent on the margins of society. And that's one of the big discussions. So anyway, that's where we're at, and people are realizing that some of these ideological compromises with regard to value frameworks, like the ones that we've just talked about, are also now actually deconstructing the notion of the secular nation state. It's evolved now into the deconstruction of what our country is actually about at a state level. Forget the kind of religious moral value discussion. That contamination has moved into almost a post-Marxism, communistic, anti-human, post-nationalism, which is actually shaking the very foundations of the country. And this is where Justin Trudeau, with his ideological kind of insertions into Canada, has said that Canada will be the first post-nation state, that COVID has provided Canada with an opportunity for a reset. And that is actually what is happening. We're moving into almost a UN governance, where our real governance is happening ideologically through the thought processes and international statutes of the United Nations. And we're moving away from democracy. We're moving towards statutory authority. And this, you'll know well, in the UK, these are some of the reasons why the British people voted to leave the European Union, right? They wanted control of their culture, values, traditions, their laws, and their borders. And these are the same forces that are working to erode what Canada was designed to be. And so, Father Calvin,
state sounds oxymoronic, but of course it's actually about one world government. It is quite demonic, if anything.
It absolutely is. And actually, if Canadians are listening, we had the Liberal Party, which is the party on the left in Canada, just had a leadership debate, and the two main contenders for that leadership debate were falling over themselves to basically embrace Canada within a new world order. And I'm quoting that. It's not like this isn't
not a conspiracy. This is their words.
This is like Canadian BBC broadcasting this embracing of, we're going to be a subset of the New World Order. Careful to make the distinction that the New World Order no longer contains the United States, because they've left that agenda, and thank God for that. So, we're in a massive churn now, time of transition in this country, and people are starting to wake up. I say to Canadians, and we're in the middle of a federal election right now, and I will say to Canadians, this isn't just politics. We're in a scenario of geopolitics, because we have a clear post-national agenda that is probably embedded ideologically with globalists. There's a strong agenda from the Chinese government, the CCP. And we have an American president that's telling us not to change how we produce our milk or the bacterial content of our egg yolks. He's saying, you guys are bad neighbors. You have a dirty backyard, and you have a terrible fence, and I'm putting tariffs on you until I fix that. And what I mean by that is, he is saying you have a massive industrial scale fentanyl production that is harming the world and America. You are enabling human trafficking, and specifically child trafficking, and you need to have it stop. But our
Sounds
response from our
reasonable.
legacy, yeah, well, it is. It's incredibly reasonable, and to common sense Canadians would say, yeah, we don't want organized crime running these systems either in our country. We would fix these, but it is kind of a study to explore and see that the conservative leader, who is now running with the hopes of being the prime minister of this country, has rolled out a retaliatory tariff response, and everyone's scratching their heads because that's actually a globalist response. It's not a conservative response. So, and that's where I really work hard to allow Canadians to see that where you're putting your hope to be a rescue from the liberal tyranny, the Conservatives are enabling the same tyranny by omission to confront the things that the Liberal government is actually doing. And that we need to look a lot more deeply at what's going on and get past just looking at the symptoms that the media tells us are the issues, when there's root issues that are actually undermining our people, our culture, our values, and our traditions.
Thank you for watching my Common Sense Crusade. If you'd like to watch the whole show, you can subscribe to lotuseaters.com for as little as £5 per month, and then you get access to a bank of content as well. My show is 3 p.m. every Thursday. See you there. Deus Vult.